My husband looked me in the eyes last Tuesday night and told me I was cold. Cold. Like I was some kind of appliance that stopped working. Like I had become ice when all I ever wanted was for someone to notice the fire still burning underneath. But he never tried to reach for it. He never even looked. And now, sitting here, writing this to all of you, I'm about to confess something I never thought I would say out loud. Something that could destroy my marriage, my family, and everything I've built for the last 12 years. But I can't carry this weight alone anymore. My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, ages 9 and 7. My husband, Daniel, is a good man. Let me say that right now. He provides, he's present at home, he doesn't yell or insult me. On paper, we are the perfect American family. But paper doesn't capture what happens when the lights go out and you lie next to someone who feels like a stranger. Paper doesn't show the loneliness that creeps into your chest when you realize you've become invisible to the person who once couldn't take his eyes off you. It started slowly, this coldness he accused me of. After our second child was born, Daniel threw himself into work. He said he wanted to give us a better life, and I believed him. I stayed home, took care of the kids, kept the house together. I became a mother, a housekeeper, a coordinator of everyone's lives. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a woman. I stopped being Claire. And Daniel stopped seeing me as anything other than the person who made sure his shirts were ironed and dinner was on the table. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, leave a comment below. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe. I need you with me on this journey because what I'm about to tell you next is going to get even harder. I started noticing the shift about 2 years ago. Daniel would come home, kiss me on the forehead like I was his sister, and head straight to his office. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pick up the dry cleaning? What time is soccer practice? We need to talk about the mortgage. We stopped laughing together. We stopped touching. And when I tried to initiate something, anything, he would say he was tired or stressed. I told myself it was just a phase, that all marriages go through this, but deep down, I felt myself shrinking. Then came that night, last Tuesday. We had just put the kids to bed, and I asked him if we could talk. I wanted to tell him how lonely I felt, how much I missed us. But before I could even start, he sighed and said, "Claire, I feel like you've been so distant lately. So cold. I don't know what happened to you." I sat there, stunned. Me? Cold? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But instead, I just nodded and went to bed. I cried myself to sleep that night, and he never even noticed. The next morning, I woke up feeling numb. I went through the motions, made breakfast, got the kids ready for school, smiled at the other moms during drop-off. But inside, I was breaking. And that's when everything changed. His name is Evan. He's a contractor we hired to remodel our kitchen. Daniel wanted to update the house before his parents came to visit, so we brought Evan in about 3 weeks ago. He's 42, divorced, with kind eyes and a voice that actually listens when you talk. I didn't think much of him at first. He was just the guy fixing our cabinets. But then one afternoon, while Daniel was at work and the kids were at school, Evan and I started talking. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. This story is about to take a turn I never saw coming. It started innocently enough. He asked me how I was doing, and for some reason, I answered honestly. I told him I was tired, that I felt like I was drowning in routines and nobody even noticed. And he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "I see you." 3 words. That's all it took. I felt something crack open inside me, something I had kept buried for years. We talked for over an hour that day. About life, about marriage, about what it feels like to be forgotten. He told me about his divorce, how his ex-wife had left him for someone else because he had stopped making her feel special. And I realized that Daniel and I were heading down the same path. Evan started coming by more often after that, sometimes to work on the kitchen, sometimes just to talk. Daniel never questioned it. He was too busy with his own life to notice that another man was seeing me in ways he hadn't in years. And I'm not proud of what happened next, but I'm not going to lie to you either. One Friday afternoon, the kids were at my mom's house and Daniel was out of town for a work conference. Evan came by to finish installing the new countertops. We were alone in the house, and the air between us felt different, heavier. He brushed past me in the hallway, and I felt my heart race in a way it hadn't in years. We stood there, inches apart, and I could feel the heat radiating off him. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, and I closed my eyes. For the first time in so long, I felt alive. I felt seen. I felt wanted. But before anything could happen, my phone rang. It was Daniel, calling to check in. The moment shattered. Evan stepped back, and I answered the call, my voice shaking. Daniel didn't notice. He never does. After I hung up, Evan looked at me and said, "I should go." And he left. But the feeling stayed. The guilt, the desire, the confusion. All of it stayed. If you're wondering what I did next, make sure you're subscribed, because this is where everything gets even more complicated. I spent the entire weekend in a fog. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the hallway, about how close I had come to crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I felt guilty, but I also felt angry. Angry at Daniel for making me feel so invisible that another man's attention felt like oxygen. Angry at myself for even entertaining the idea of betraying my family. But mostly, I felt lost. On Monday, Evan came back, and this time we didn't just talk. This time he kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was asking permission. And God help me, I kissed him back. I let myself get lost in that moment, in the feeling of being wanted again. We didn't go further than that. I pulled away, tears streaming down my face, and told him this couldn't happen, that I was married, that I had kids, that I wasn't this person. And he just nodded, told me he understood, and said he would finish the job and leave. But the damage was done. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. That night, Daniel came home and asked me how my day was. I looked at him, this man I had built a life with, and I lied. I said it was fine. And in that moment, I realized how far we had drifted. He didn't see the turmoil in my eyes. He didn't sense the guilt radiating off me. He just nodded, grabbed a beer, and turned on the TV. And I sat there, wondering how we had gotten to this place. Make sure you're following along, because what happens next is going to change everything. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Over the next week, I avoided Evan as much as I could. He finished the kitchen, sent Daniel the final invoice, and left. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had betrayed not just my marriage, but myself. I started questioning everything. Did I even love Daniel anymore? Or was I just staying because it was easier than facing the truth? Was I a horrible person for kissing another man? Or was I just a woman who had been starving for affection and finally found someone who fed her? I decided I needed to talk to someone, so I called my best friend, Jessica. We've known each other since college, and she's the only person I trust with something like this. I told her everything, about the loneliness, about Evan, about the kiss. And you know what she said? She said, "Claire, you're not a bad person. You're a human being who's been neglected for too long. But you need to decide what you want before this gets worse." She was right. I needed to make a choice. But how do you choose between the life you've built and the person you've become? How do you decide if it's worth fighting for something that might already be dead? That's when I decided to confront Daniel. I waited until the kids were in bed and I sat him down. I told him I needed to talk about us, about how disconnected we had become, about how lonely I felt. And for the first time in years, he actually listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't make excuses. He just sat there. And when I finished, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "I didn't know. I thought you were fine. I thought we were fine." And that's when I realized the problem. We had both been living in our own worlds, assuming the other person was okay. We had stopped communicating, stopped checking in, stopped trying, and somewhere along the way we had lost each other. If this is resonating with you, leave a comment and let me know. And please, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Daniel asked me if there was someone else, and in that moment, I had a choice. I could tell him the truth about Evan, about the kiss, about how close I had come to throwing everything away. Or I could lie. protect him from the pain, and try to rebuild what we had lost. I looked at him, this man who had been my partner for 12 years, the father of my children, and I made a decision. I told him the truth. I told him about Evan, about how invisible I had felt, about the kiss. And I watched as his face went from confusion to hurt to anger. He stood up, paced the room, and then finally sat back down. He didn't yell. He didn't call me names. He just asked, "Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy?" And I said, "Because you stopped asking." We stayed up all night talking, really talking. For the first time in years, we laid everything out on the table, the resentment, the loneliness, the regrets. And by the time the sun came up, we had a choice to make. We could end this, walk away, and split our family apart. Or we could fight for what we still had, rebuild from the ashes, and try to find our way back to each other. We chose to fight, but it hasn't been easy. We started going to couples therapy. We set aside time every week just for us. No kids, no distractions. We started dating each other again, remembering why we fell in love in the first place. And slowly, very slowly, things started to shift. Daniel started seeing me again, not just as a wife or a mother, but as Claire, as a woman with needs and desires and dreams. And I started seeing him again too, not just as a provider or a father, but as the man I chose to spend my life with. But here's the thing, even though we're working on our marriage, I still think about Evan sometimes. I think about that moment in the hallway, about the way he looked at me, about how alive I felt. And I wonder if that makes me a terrible person. I wonder if I'll ever fully forgive myself for crossing that line. And I wonder if Daniel will ever fully trust me again. Subscribe if you want to know how this story ends. Because I'm still living it, and I don't have all the answers yet. So here's where I am now. My marriage is hanging by a thread, but it's a thread we're both holding on to. My kids have no idea what almost happened, and I pray they never do. And Evan? I haven't seen or heard from him since he finished the kitchen. But sometimes when I'm cooking dinner or making coffee, I look at those countertops he installed, and I'm reminded of everything that almost was. I'm not here to tell you I'm a victim or a villain. I'm just a woman who got lost somewhere along the way and made a choice that changed everything. I'm still figuring out if it was the right choice or the worst mistake of my life. But what I do know is this: marriage is hard. It takes constant work, constant communication, constant effort. And the moment you stop trying, the moment you stop seeing each other is the moment you lose what you had. So now I'm asking you, what would you do in my place? Would you have told your partner the truth even if it meant risking everything? Or would you have kept it buried, tried to move on, and hoped the guilt would fade? Leave your answers in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story without judgment. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe to this channel because I'll be sharing more of my journey, more of my truth, and I need your support to get through this. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Because this story, it's far from over. I don't know if Daniel and I will make it. I don't know if we'll look back on this one day and be grateful we fought for each other, or if we'll realize we were just postponing the inevitable. But for now, we're trying. And maybe that's all any of us can do. So tell me, what would you do in my place?